Building the Ultimate GameCube Part 2. So this is actually going to be a two-part video because I'm going to do one video installing it and then a separate video where I'm testing it out. And this is the blue retro internal adapter version 3. I found some videos online showing how to install it, but those were prior versions. This is the newest one that's available. I got it from Laser Bear Industries. And the main difference I'm aware of here is that the previous models had a separate antenna that needed to clip onto the board somewhere, and then it needed to be glued or taped on the inside of this controller port, like right around here. This one has that antenna built in, so it doesn't have a separate antenna that you need to attach anywhere. There's also some other differences, like this thing's 3D printed, I guess, on this version, and in the prior versions it wasn't. But yeah, I'm excited to put this in. So I already unscrewed the top of the GameCube. Set that aside. And what I gotta do is disconnect this controller port first and be very careful when taking this off because these tabs break very easily. So I gotta just remove this ribbon cable. All right, and set this aside for now. So the next step is unscrewing these two screws. And I did watch some other installation tutorials online before attempting this, because other than that Bluetooth antenna being absent, which actually simplifies the process, I don't think anything else about the hookup for this is different. So you gotta unscrew the original board. Wow, it's in there really tight. Jeez. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Set these screws aside for safekeeping. I don't want to lose any like I did in my last video. Okay. And this should just lift right out. So here's the original board with the battery soldered in. I thought about doing the battery mod for this, but I don't really need this piece anymore, and also the battery works fine. It doesn't have any issues keeping the time and date or anything. So I'll just set this aside. And now we're going to mount the new board. So that just drops right in here where the old one was. And use the same screws to screw it back in. I won't make them quite so tight this time. That's just how they were from the factory. I didn't mess with this piece before. Let's see. Get it lined up properly. Okay, so I did get those screws, and the issue was that because this part is 3D printed, the holes weren't like completely open. There were some like little, I don't know what you call them, but like strands of plastic in there. So I was still able to get the screws in. I just had to be a bit more precise and careful with it, but I ended up getting them in with no problem. I suppose if it was really an issue, I could have taken like a smaller screwdriver or something else and just poked it in there and sort of tried to clear out those holes a little bit, but that didn't end up being necessary. So that's done. Now, the next step, and I do have the Laser Bear Industries guide up also, so I'm referring back to that because this part with the cables is a little bit, or the wires is a little bit confusing. It is to me, at least. So this part should just plug back in. It's kind of a tight spot though, so I gotta be a little careful with it, getting it lined up properly. And then just pushing it down. All right, so that is connected. Okay. I'm not going to fully seat it back in because I do need to plug some stuff into these ports. Okay, so the next step is to get it all wired up correctly. It's a little bit confusing how all of this works, but I went ahead and unplugged the power cable and the fan cable from the board here. So the smaller one is the fan. If you saw my Noctua fan mod video, you'll recognize it. And this is the power cable. So this one here is going to plug into the board, and then the other end is going to plug into here. So okay, so that's been plugged in. And then the fan is going to plug into this smaller one here. It's pretty obvious that's the only place that it'll fit in anyways. Okay, that's done. And now for this one, so the original power cable is going to plug into this female end here. Make sure it's facing the right way. And then this end is going to plug into this port here. So I will plug that in now. Okay, and reconnect this controller ribbon cable. So if I had to do this again, I would connect all these wires before connecting the ribbon cable, because these things are kind of fragile and it's always a little bit nerve-wracking unplugging them and plugging them back in. And this one also, because it's a really tight spot, it's hard to get it lined up properly. Okay, so that's in. I'm going to go ahead and clip this back on. All right. So that's all set. Now we have a whole mess of wires here. There isn't really a whole lot we can do about that. I mean, we can run it, you know, along here, which is where I had the fan cable running originally. Okay, and kind of tuck this away under the drive assembly. All right, and then this one also, I think there is enough space to just tuck it away in here. This makes this fan mod a little bit awkward because it's got this extra long cable that it came with, and it's kind of hard to tuck everything away and still leave room for the other stuff. All right, and this one, oh geez, this needed to run under all of these, didn't it? Okay. I'll unclip these. Okay. This one runs under, down, under this little bracket thing. And then this plugs in. It's barely long enough, but it plugs into the original power port. And in the video from Laser Bear Industries, they said this is actually a different type of connector, but it still works. Okay, so everything is hooked up the way it's supposed to be. It's all pretty much the same as before, but what I did was I actually had to swap or flip this one. I don't know if it actually makes a difference or not. I can't tell if it's the same connector or a different connector on each end of this, but I was able to flip it around, and I got one end into this just fine, and the other end just fit into this. I had to apply a little bit of force, but it was okay. And the rest is all good to go. I have the wires, the extra long fan wire tucked away in here in the side. along with everything else. I have this one that connects to the board running first along the bottom, followed by this power cable that plugs into the original power cable that comes out of the GameCube. And then last I have the fan wire. So here's hoping that when I put the cover back on, everything is going to fit together nicely. And I don't think there's any risk of pinched wires with this setup because it's tucked away nicely down here. So I will just put this back on, lower it down the way it's supposed to go. Okay, so putting this back together was kind of a pain in the butt. I had to pause the camera just to save everyone's time, for those of you that are watching this. But what I ended up doing was rerouting the wires because it was really hard to put this thing back together. I think it's because of this long-ass Noctua fan cable for the Noctua fan mod. Okay, it doesn't need to be this long, but it is. So I I originally had it like going this way and then folded and then going back that way. And I think it was just like adding a little bit too much thickness here and interfering with something with the cover. Now, keep in mind, I do have this USB-C mod installed as well. And it has this little piece that goes inside the cover as well. So I think there was just some issue with everything fitting back together the way it should be. This guy also I have running underneath this part now, and it's tucked away kind of behind here. The power cable that plugs into here and here, that I didn't really mess with that. That's still going the same. I mean, there's really only one way that can run anyways because it's so short. It's like the perfect length. So, but this makes it kind of, I think if you have this Noctua mod that also has this extra long cable, I think this is going to be the best way to have this installed. What I'm going to do is take a screwdriver and I'm going to use it to tuck these two wires down because there's actually a little groove here that the wires fit into. So I'm not sure how visible that is, but it's just right here. So I'm going to try to tuck these two wires in, and they do flip around, so I'll kind of take it out of here if I can and flip them around. Okay, so the red one goes on the bottom because that's how it comes out of the GameCube motherboard here. So I'll tuck the red one down here. Okay, so that's in there. My finger ended up working better than the screwdriver. And the black one goes right above it. There we go. And then this is here. All right, so it's all set now. Got to make sure everything's like pressed together also the way it's supposed to be. Nothing's loose. And now I can, oh no, okay. That's not an issue. Okay. That's all set. So now I can put the cover back on and hopefully it should just mount on without needing to use a lot of pressure. Got to make sure that the wires down here don't get pinched, which they won't because I put them into that little groove. All right. So here, as you can see, it fits together like normal, like how it's supposed to be. Okay, the open button works, the power button's where it's supposed to be up here. And that is all set. Okay, so all that's left is to screw these 4 screws in down below, and it should be okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, I really hope that this plays nice with all the other mods I have in here, because I have the fan. The fan shouldn't really affect anything, but I have this USB-C PD mod down here. And I'm going to put in the flippy drive, of course, when my flippy drive arrives. I'm going to put that in. So we'll see how the GameCube performs with all of the mods in at once. But for now, we're just going to test the Bluetooth thing. I'm going to do that in a separate video. But I will pause it, plug it in, and just make sure that it powers on at least. So there you have it, folks. That's the Blue Retro V3 Bluetooth controller adapter, internal controller port replacement. So it appears to be functioning well. Everything's great. By the way, Laser Bear Industries, the creator of this mod, have a very excellent video and web guide as well, web page with a guide, written guide. So I will link those in the description if you just want a sort of a simple, straightforward installation video. This one, of course, this is the V3 installation, so it's slightly different, but it's actually one step less. It's not really that different. It's simpler than the previous versions to install. But you know, I'm just kind of like, I'm into this tinkering thing. This is a hobby for me. I don't do these professionally or anything, so my video is just intended to sort of share my own personal experience installing this and other mods into my GameCube. I intend to do other consoles as well in the future. I've done other consoles in the past. I just haven't recorded them and put them on YouTube. So yeah, that's how it is. I'm happy with like how everything looks. I'm gonna do another video which will be actually testing it out with probably a DualSense PlayStation 5 controller. But that's it for now, folks. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.